We preview the Ravens Week 16 matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals with a very special guest next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, I'm your host, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire. On Location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL. It's the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. We return. It is Purple Friday here, of course, on the Locked On Ravens podcast. And here with me today to dive into the Ravens Week 15 matchup against Green Bay and also preview the Ravens Week 16 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and, of course, Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. And Qadry, this Ravens team, going through it a little bit, 3 straight losses now, heading into Week 16 against a very good Cincinnati team in a huge matchup. How you doing today?
Well, I'm doing wonderful. I know that this is the meat of the season. This is where it comes down to playing your best. We keep saying that, but it's true. and now, for the first time, the Ravens are on the outside looking in as far as the playoffs, which ultimately is why you're playing this regular season, the jockey for position to get into the playoffs. So lots going on to get into on today's show.
Yeah, and it's so important now, especially because 2 of the Ravens' last 3 remaining games are against division opponents. The Cincinnati game, where you mentioned the Ravens are now out of the playoff picture, they're in 8th because of all the wacky tiebreakers that go on, and everything goes into those. But the Bengals end up winning, the Ravens end up losing in Week 15, and that catapults Cincinnati over Baltimore in the AFC North. So they now hold that lead, making this Week 16 game. I mean, it's such a huge matchup in so many ways. But Q, I want to first go back to Week 15 against Green Bay, because a lot of people thought that the Ravens were going to be out of this game by halftime. You know, they were going to lose by 30 because they had no secondary. Lamar Jackson ends up being inactive in this one, but Baltimore takes it to the end, ends up losing 31-30. And part of the reason they were in it the whole time had to do with Tyler Huntley and his play and how he stepped up. I mean, he has shown when he's been in the games that he's been in that, I mean, he is one who could lead an NFL team. Now with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, unfortunately, when Jackson is healthy for Huntley, that's not going to be the case. Jackson, at least for me, is the guy there. He's the better player. But Huntley, 28-40, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, also had 2 scores on the ground. What were your overall takeaways from Huntley's performance in Week 15 based off what you saw from him in previous weeks also?
Yeah, I look at what he's done, the times that he's gotten a chance and his number's been called. The one thing that absolutely sticks out is his preparedness for the moment, whether it been Chicago where I was out there and getting ready to do my pregame show and I look over my shoulder and I see him warming up and throwing, and for him to go out there and right at the last minute be thrusting into the starting role, perform well, get the win on the road, tough situation. Obviously, Lamar goes down with an ankle injury at home against Cleveland. He rallies the team back. That was on the road. That was remarkable. I look at this Green Bay game as this. When you see the way in which he started it off, the 3rd down conversions, right off the bat, he is throwing it into tight windows to make those 3rd down conversions. He completed a 4th and 6 on the most critical of drives to put them back in the conversation of going for 2 points. He was phenomenal. He was decisive with his actions. He knew where he wanted to go with the football. He didn't hesitate. They had the 1 sack that I believe was in the first drive, and that kind of stalled their momentum, if you will, as far as the scoring. But I thought what he did was quite remarkable for an undrafted quarterback. So that's something that front office guys need to go look at, but we'll digress.
Absolutely. And the Ravens offense seemed to be clicking a little bit this week, a little bit more than we had seen, especially in the run game in Q. There was one play from Devonta Freeman where he made some guys miss and just barely didn't get it. And I said, you know what? I know Q looked at that play and said, just break it, just go. Because I know you and Devonta Freeman, he's looked good, but the big runs just haven't been there because he's been a shoelace away or a fingernail away from doing it. But Latavius Murray in this game came in and provided the Ravens with a couple of big runs. His longest was 16. Were you impressed with the run game and the offensive line in this one? Because the Ravens run game averaged 5.5 yards per carry as a team, which, you know, over the past couple weeks and even for the entire year, we haven't seen a ton of that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give me some time. I need time. I am used to 200 yards. I'm used to like just dominating. I'm used to darn near like we'll do what we want to do, when we want to do it, how we want to do it type of a mindset. Not, well, you know, we were fortunate. No, I don't want just 16 yards. I want 16 yards to be the norm. So, yes. Was I happy that they were productive enough? Sure. But I think that the expectation, I mean, the bar was just set so incredibly high, and I'm not backing down off of that expectation. I think they can continue to run the ball. You know, it's late in the year. You know, you need to run the ball better, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But that's where, in my mind, I am thinking with the run game.
Yeah, you know, when you hit the cold months, you hit December, January, you want to run the ball there. You want to wear defenses down. And I feel like for a Ravens team, you're right. We expected 200 yards a game. The Ravens in their final game against Cincinnati last year, you had J.K. Dobbins stiff-arming Jermaine Pratt to the end zone on a 75 or 80-yard touch. I mean, Those are the types of plays people got used to with, you know, a dual threat quarterback with Lamar Jackson who can throw the ball and run the ball. You have Dobbins, you have Edwards. And all of a sudden, you're heading into these games now without any of them because you have Huntley out there who is a dual threat quarterback in his own right. But Murray, Freeman, you know, you had Bell earlier in the season, Williams in his stints, McCrary, all these guys, they just aren't the players that Dobbins and Edwards are. And it's unfortunate because we've seen how high this run offense can go. And now we're starting to be like, all right, we want to get back there, but do they have the talent in the run game and in the offensive line? But Q, we've talked about 2-point conversions a lot over these past couple of weeks, and I'm going to spare us the should the Ravens have gone for it or not conversation. In my opinion, I think they should have, because the way Aaron Rodgers was moving that football, if he got the ball back in a tie game with 40 seconds left, he could have drove the Packers down the field in 2 plays and 3 plays and gotten Mason Crosby in field goal range. But I'm more so curious, Q, as to your thoughts on the play. The Ravens have Tyler Huntley roll out. He's pretty much locked in on Mark Andrews the entire time. Andrews had a phenomenal game in this one. Were you okay with the play call that Greg Roman called in that situation, or would you have liked to see something different?
Not that I wouldn't. So you're 2 of 8 on 2-point conversions. So that's not a very high percentage. I love the fact that, you know, we saw this week as far as the sideline sound. We literally saw John Harbaugh talking to his guys. I thought that was so important because it gives a little, you know, insight on his thinking and his psyche, and then the bond / connection he has from player to coach, coach to player. That's evident. You know, guys can talk about it, but when you kind of see it in the heat of the moment, you know, their guard, their window, their wall, if you will, is down, and it's like, all right, this is who he really is. And he's not sitting in front of the media, you know, kind of being very rigid with his comments or his you know, positioning on why he does what he does. Now, with all that said, the play itself, if you know you're an aggressive ball club and you're going to go for it on 4th down, you're going to go for it for 2, why not be more creative with your plays? Because I know when you're in practice, and I've been there, done that, you do your 2-point plays, you got like a handful of those, and that's it. And if you might run them, you might not. This is a team that runs them often. I would design a period of practice just for the 2-point plays scenario and literally come up as far as a play call design to scheme guys open. For that particular one, I thought Tyler Huntley, if he had just a smidge more poise and patience, he wasn't necessarily under duress. He could have sprinted to the corner And had the safety gone down, which he did, Savage, and obviously the corner was right there as well, almost intercepted it. But he didn't throw it to the corner or the pylon. If he'd have thrown it to that front pylon, I think Mark would have had a chance to get it. But then also, if he were to sprint out and he would have put pressure on that corner, or on the edge, I should say, and then you had invited guys up, that's where I think people are saying, including myself, from a Marquise Brown standpoint, Marquise was coming open. He was. And I think that's something that, as a young quarterback, you got to look at and say, okay, how can I learn for next time? But I think from a coaching standpoint, I'd have loved to have seen them do more with Tyler as far as practice and the preparation that goes into, being that aggressive.
Right, and it varies by team, I feel like, because there are some teams who don't go for it on two at all. There are other teams like the Ravens who do. So I think adjusting practice time to go in situations you're probably going to be in at one point or another during the season, or for the Ravens, it's been 3 consecutive weeks.
Right.
Those are good things to put in. It's like having a fullback. There are not a lot of teams that have a fullback in the NFL anymore. The Ravens are one of them, and they use Ricard in a big way. So it's something where, it's having situations that will benefit your team. So putting in that practice time cue, I think that's a great idea, honestly. And the Ravens, their defense, moving over there real quick in this Green Bay game, very decimated in the secondary in the back half there. They were working with Robert Jackson, who hadn't played a defensive snap all season, on Devontae Adams. They were putting multiple guys on Devontae Adams. Now, Aaron Rodgers didn't throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns or anything. Adams was held to 4 for 46 in the score. But what were your overall impressions of the Ravens defense, with all the guys they didn't have, with how they were able to, stifle Aaron Rodgers in some situations and then give up the big plays in other situations?
Yeah, they sacked Aaron Rodgers. What was it? 4 times, I think, was the total number. That was impressive. On third down, he was 5 of 9. So yeah, there were some, but there were times where they needed to get him off the field. They got him off the field. That was impressive. Penalty wise, when I look at the bigger picture, you got to realize, if you're a Dafe Owe, you got to know the rules. You can't shove a quarterback, but let alone shove a quarterback. You're talking about Aaron Rodgers, A-Rod up in this house. So if A-Rod is up in this house 99, you ain't him. And they're going to give it to Aaron Rodgers every single time. So little things like that, I thought, kind of shot yourself in the foot, but they got after him. You talk about the secondary being decimated. I thought the game plan was really cool because it was conservative enough. And in that conservative flow, I was like, well, we better just keep everything in front of us as best we can. There was a couple times where they took some deep ball shots that, it would have been, if you weren't disciplined with your eyes, if you weren't disciplined with your technique, it would have been a tight one. And I think it could have gone for a big score. And yeah, we would have been talking about Aaron Rodgers throwing for 500 yards. But with what they had and what it all looked like going into the game, I was impressed with what the defense did.
Yeah, in the fourth quarter, they came up with a couple of huge stops to keep the offense in it and to get them in position to win the game. And again, a game the Ravens, a lot of people had them out of it by halftime, but this game was tied at halftime. And the Ravens, they showed that fight and that grit that they've shown all season, which has been amazing. And I'm expecting again in Cincinnati, although we'll see how many players are available for it. We'll talk about that Cincinnati game in our second segment. So we'll head into our first break. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar, in Built Bar. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There are so many flavors you'll have a hard time choosing. Built Bar gives you the extra fuel you need to bust down the mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers. People are so passionate about their favorite flavors, so tell Santa to throw a few of those Built Bars in those stockings and dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. If you like some of the marshmallow treats around the holidays, be sure to get your hands on the Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. No one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. But winning feels so much better. Traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're up against. Stat Hero is the first of this kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, winner take all. And here's the crazy part. Stat Hero shows you their lineups before you play, and you handpick the team you want to face one-on-one. This never-before-seen innovation of fantasy sports and sports betting hybrids has Stat Hero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better. Why? Because you don't have to compete against thousands of experts or unknowns. Stat Hero puts you in control of your fate. With Stat Hero, you're in control of the stakes. You decide how much you're going to play for, and Stat Hero has no choice but to take it because they're daring you to beat them. Stat Hero head-to-head is what daily fantasy sports should be, one-on-one. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. We return here. It's our second segment of this Purple Friday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Allstriker still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, the Ravens, they have a big game here. This game, for me at least, honestly makes or breaks their year with the way that the head-to-head tiebreaker would go. If the Ravens lose this one, their divisional record would fall to 1-4 if they lose this game. So this is a big one. But I think one of the key concerns for many is, will this game even be played on Sunday because of the COVID strain that the Ravens have gone through over this past week? They've had, at the time of this recording, a player go on the reserve COVID list for 8 consecutive days. The Ravens have 17 players on that list. Q, if the Ravens have guys test positive or go on the list on Friday, here today, and Saturday, do you think there's a real possibility this game gets moved?
It could be. I know that the NFL backed off of the Washington football team and the Philadelphia Eagles game being canceled, and they postponed it and pushed it back. And the reasoning for that was due to cha-ching money. You knew that the players weren't going to get paid, and 18% of the entire league not getting paid. The union was like, no, we're balking at that. We're going to have to figure this out, which they did. But then you also see there's a couple of people on the Eagles staff that now are in COVID protocols and the whole 9 yards. Well, I think for the Ravens and for the league and for just the overall experience, it's a scenario where, yeah, you could, in fact, postpone it. I don't think they're going to cancel it, but it is a serious concern for the overall picture of other leagues. I know, whether it be the NHL, which they stopped and postponed play. I think the NBA, they're trying to figure out things too, and it's real. This is life in 2020 and 2021, heading into 2022.
Yeah, it is. And with the games that were moved for week 15, it wouldn't shock me to see the NFL move it again. Obviously, you mentioned, the players union with the money and, the canceling versus postponement. There's a lot that goes into it. But for even just contamination reasons, if the Ravens, who did play the Browns, and then the Browns had their thing and maybe the Ravens got it from there, we don't know. We don't know how it got there. But if that was the case, if the Ravens have a guy test positive on Saturday or go on the list on Saturday, they play Cincinnati on Sunday. These guys are practicing with each other, right? They're doing drills and all that stuff. They've been around each other. So, who's not to say this other guy doesn't have it? So it's all this crazy stuff going on, but hopefully there is a game on Sunday that the Ravens are behind the outbreak, hopefully, and we'll get some football. But Q, assuming this game is played, the Ravens, Lamar Jackson at the time of this recording hasn't practiced for the past 2 days heading into Friday. Every day he doesn't practice, it seems less and less likely he will suit up because practice is so important, especially for a young quarterback who's in his 4th season and hasn't played in about 2 weeks, just under, if you want to count that Cleveland game. So Q, regardless of who's behind center for the Ravens in week 16, the Ravens' third down efficiency in week 7 against Cincinnati, they were 5 of 16. They were 1 of 4 on 4th down. Those are areas where they have to improve. But what would you change if you're this Ravens offense based off of what you saw? Because they were still able to put up 17 points, but that's not enough to win at this level right now, I don't think.
Yeah. I think the one thing that we saw in the Packers game was the fact that the Ravens offense sort of came alive in the first quarter, the first drive. The rhythm was there. The timing was there. The big play on the third play of the game was there. All of that. That's something that I think is really important to set a tone of today is not your day Cincinnati, you got to recognize it's going to be a long day for you. We're ready for you. We're going to do what we need to do, and we're going to do what we do and do best. So aggressive play calling, aggressiveness as far as taking your shots down the field, making sure from a run aspect of things. I know that we like, especially you, Kevin, like the way they were running against the Packers. Okay, now come on. We need a couple more 16-yard runs.
Yeah, I'll take it.
16-yard runs will be okay. Now, if we can throw in a 35 or 40-yard run, now we're really talking. But, yes, I think, this offense, it's about momentum, and it's about going fast. It's about playing hard and putting up points right away. I think, squelch any kind of, we don't know or whatever, or giving the guy, the false hope idea. Go out there, play your ball, and do your thing.
Yeah, we saw against Green Bay, the Ravens have those multiple good first quarter offensive possessions. They scored a first quarter touchdown for the first time since week 6. It was a miracle. It was miraculous. And it's so big with the momentum because we've talked about it before, Q, when the Ravens were in the midst of that first quarter no touchdown streak. And, it really impacted the game because I think it took the air out of the offense at times because they were moving the ball effectively, but then there was a penalty or there was a sack, and then the drive is continuously just pushed back and back and back. And then all of a sudden you have something else going on there. So that'll be big. But I think another key factor in this game, Q, is Mark Andrews. And his performance has been unbelievable this year. It makes the Pro Bowl. I mean, obviously very well deserved from him, but the Bengals are down some linebackers, and they're down a lot of them. And I feel like this is an aspect of the game where obviously Tyler Huntley, he prefers Mark Andrews in the pass game, and I mean, rightfully so. Andrews is a phenomenal talent. How big do you think Mark Andrews is, as he is every week, but how big in this particular matchup do you think that Andrews could be against Cincinnati?
So we know that they're going to be looking at film. They're going to be looking at what they did, from 4 or 5 weeks of film, and they're going to see Mark Andrews get targeted a ton. They're going to know that he's the security blanket for both Lamar and Tyler. So whoever plays, 89 is the guy that you need to seek out. With that said, if you're able to scheme him open, that's great. But if you're able to use him also, Hollywood Brown, Rashad Bateman, both of you guys, I would be able to be on his, I'd love to be on his side because I know you're going to invite a safety. And if I got to just beat my guy to get over the top, bruh, that's easy. That's some slim pickings right there. Pardon me, not slim. That's some abundant picking. That's what we're talking about. Like, I'm about to get this thing because of the way in which they're inviting coverage to 89's way. They're going to identify where he's at on the field. They're going to try to figure out, is it a safety? Is it going to be a nickel guy plus a safety? However it's going to be, I would say take him away, let someone else beat me. Good. I think Hollywood Brown, he had his targets. He had a ton of targets as well. And he had his 10 catches too. But his 10 catches only went for 43 yards. And that's kind of running back material right there. That's like a little swing pass out of the backfield. That's not, playing a dominant receiver. You usually get 10 catches, you're a receiver. Minimum, you're like 119 yards receiver. Minimum. And if you got 10 catches, you getting one as far as the end zone, so you might have a touchdown, maybe 2. So the way in which this offense functions through Mark Andrews, I would use it as an advantage for him and kind of reading the scheme to either go to him or, in fact, go to someone else and scheme my other guys open.
With these absences, you might be putting on those pads on Sunday and being on 89's side. So if you get those 10 catches, you're going for at least 119. I believe it.
Ooh, buddy, yes, indeed. I'll be one running out of bounds, not getting hit guy.
Well, you know what? They might need you out there. So if that's the case, then I'm confident in you. But, this Ravens team on offense, they've had to rely on a bunch of different players on their offensive line. And now they're having guys test positive and all this other stuff where we have Patrick McCarry, who had a full practice on Thursday, so that is very good news, and we've talked about how they impact the run game. With Huntley back there, though, and even with Jackson, it seems like they're getting flushed out of the pocket. every 2 seconds, 1 second there. How important is it for the tackles in particular? So Alejandro Villanueva, and if it is McCary out there, how important is it for them to hold their own and give Tyler Huntley or whoever it is, if it's Lamar Jackson or Huntley, some more time, some more clean time in that pocket?
Cincinnati has an amazing defensive front, and they took it to Lamar Jackson and his offensive tackles at home. I think, this is something where I'm not going to, sound the alarm, but at the same time, they got this meet at the quarterback mentality. They're a fast defense. Now they've made some mistakes, and clearly after, everyone, lauded them and told them, and sung all their praises and gave them all the flowers, they went out and stunk it up versus the Jets. But I think this is a different team. I think this is a team that kind of plays really, 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 really down to their level of competition. But since this is a division opponent, that defensive front and that front seven, I think they're, dare I say, no disrespect to TJ Watt, what he's done, but I would say they can go toe-to-toe with Pittsburgh's defensive front, and that's no cap.
Ooh, that's a tough defensive front over there in Pittsburgh. So that's high praise since Trey Hendrickson is having a great year for Cincinnati. And
unbelievable year.
DJ Reader, one of the better run stuffers in the NFL. So they have talent in that front seven. But we'll see how those linebackers being out can really impact this game, whether it does impact it at all, because they're down to, the Ravens are decimated in the secondary. Cincinnati right now has some linebacker concerns. We'll head into our final break, though. When we get back, we'll be diving into the Ravens defense and what they can do differently against the Cincinnati offense the second time around. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be back soon. BetOnline is who covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and lies than ever before as football continues to march through the college bowl season to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the website or use your mobile device today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. So don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers. BetOnline, where the game starts. We are back. Our final segment of this Purple Friday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. And Hugh, the Ravens defense had a pretty rough go of things the first time against Cincinnati in Week 7. They let Jamar Chase run all over him. Joe Mixon had some big runs later in this game. But I think the big concern for them is just, how they can stop Joe Burrow. Burrow has had a great year this year, really showed up in year 2. And against the Ravens in Week 7, Burrow had a very good game, 416 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, also did have 1 interception. If you're this Ravens defense, Q, what are you doing differently against Burrow this time around?
Yeah, I think it's important to not put yourself in tough situations that you can't get out of. What does that mean? Don't play man-to-man. Just don't. Tackle. Hey, that's a novel idea too. So between, changing up the coverage, don't get into a scenario where you're playing some strong, zero coverage, and next thing you know, you got guys out on an island, and then you got the missed tackles, and then you have big plays. I think it's so critical that, yes, the Ravens, which they did against Green Bay, they got after it. They were in Aaron Rodgers' face multiple times. I think they need to do the same thing for the younger version of Aaron Rodgers, if you will, in Burrow. I think he if you give him time, he's going to locate his guys and get the ball out. But that's priority number 1. Stopping him. Priority number 2, Mixon. When they were going through their struggles, they realized if we go ahead and run the ball, that's going to be our bread and butter that we can hang our hat on. They did. In doing so, Mixon was the guy that just rose to the top. And I think he's a little bit banged up. I think, in the Cleveland game a couple weeks back, he really, was kind of feeling a little off. But this is late in the year. This is for the division lead and all the bragging rights. I believe all hands are going to be on deck. But if you can stop Mixon and Joe Burrow by mixing up your coverages, by pressuring at the line of scrimmage and setting the edge, not allowing Mixon to get to the outside, I'll take my chances with the Ravens defense.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And making the Cincinnati offense one-dimensional. We talk about this almost every week, but if you can stop Joe Mixon, you can focus more resources on that pass offense. It has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Q. One of the big storylines, another one, is stopping Jamar Chase. Chase went for over 200 yards against this Ravens defense in Week 7. And Don Martindale got asked the question, you know, you're going to give him the Devontae Adams treatment, put 2 guys on him, and he said, you know, we're not going to go there. But in these situations where you have, you know, obviously Chase has established himself as one of the better receivers in the AFC North, at least, if not the league right now. He's had a great rookie season. Yeah, exactly. Are you kind of saying at this point, you know, we're going to put resources into stopping Jamar Chase and then let someone else beat us? Or are you still respecting the guys like Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and saying we're going to take our chances and whoever beats us, if that's what happens, that's what happens?
Yeah. So the thing is that they all have, you know, strong skill set. I think, you know, for T. Higgins, you know, he's that guy that can get really slippery and get behind you. Tyler Boyd is just Tyler Boyd. Like, you know, I like his game. He's all around smooth. But then you talk about the youngster in his big play capability. We saw that obviously here in Baltimore with the 200 plus yards. It's one of those things where, you know, Wink can't be predictable. So there are going to be, I promise you, times where he has to throw a safety over his way. I think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be somebody else type of a mindset.
Yeah, in those situations, you know, when you have all these talented pass catchers, talented offensive weapons, you have to devote resources to them, or else one of them is going to beat them. If you disrespect somebody and say, "Oh, we're just going to kind of ignore you," that person will most likely have a big game. So, for a team like Cincinnati, who has 3 really, really good pass catchers and more, CJ Uzomah, the tight end, went off against Baltimore, 2 touchdowns, 2 long ones. So the Ravens have to divvy up their resources and figure it all out. But Q, this game, you know, it is huge. You know, I've said it so many times throughout the week. Makes or breaks the Ravens season. For your predictions, do the Ravens make their season, or do they break it here in Week 16?
You're on the road. Your quarterback is hurt. You're more than likely going to go with your backup. You're getting some of the other guys sort of kind of back, depending upon what COVID and you know, the test results show on that. I don't know. I am so stumped because, you know, 3 weeks in a row, it's just such a tight ball game after tight ball game. You know, you make two point plays, and now you have an entirely different conversation going into this game. I think the Ravens, they play well under John Harbaugh. They play hard under John Harbaugh. Is this a clutch team? That's where it comes down to it. I'm going to roll with them, but I'm going to say it this way. I'm going to roll with them. I didn't expect 30 points against Green Bay. I can see 27 against Cincinnati, but now defensively, is it going to be 27-24 or 27-17?
Yeah, and I think in these games where you have these talented offenses the Ravens are going up against, the stretches of them scoring 14, 17 points, that's not going to cut it. The Bengals are going to put up their points. They're going to get theirs, and I think for them at least, the Ravens are going to have to put up maybe 27 or 30 or around that number. I'm going with the Ravens by literally 1. I don't know what that 1 is, whether it's 30-29 or 27-26, but the Ravens show up when it matters for the most part. Now, whether that's coming in with close losses, close wins, this team knows that, look, it's go time right now. This is a huge game, and I think that, as you talked about, Q, with them being well coached under John Harbaugh and Harbaugh having his guys ready, I think they absolutely will be, regardless of who's out there, who's missing the game. So I say it's going to be Baltimore by 1, but look, if they don't win this game, it'll be tough sledding. They'll have to win their final 2 at least to have a chance, and the AFC North picture at that point is probably going to be them getting in as a wild card if they do get in. So very big implications in this game, Q, but that's all I have for you here today. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show once again. And, you know, I've said it every week, but hopefully we're talking again next week after a Ravens victory and them back on top of the AFC North.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks so much, Q. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. We'll take a 2-day break. We'll make it back on Monday. We'll be diving into everything that happened in that Week 16 game against the Bengals, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you on Monday.